Hello and welcome back to our channel Forensic Science Public Desk India. And now we are going to learn about forensic facial superimposition. So this is lecture number 27 of Forensic Medicine series UGC Forensic Science. And the image which we are seeing is relevant to our subject topic now, that is Mrs. Ruxton case, which was a murder case in 1935 of England. So the lady was murdered and her skeletal remains were found as the evidence, and by assembling all the facial and skull bones they have got the skull, and by the photo image whatever it is there, so that is been superimposed and that is the presentation which is given here. Similarly, we are going to learn about the facial superimposition, what are the techniques and how it is done. So let's proceed into the topic. Introduction. Superimposition is a technique applied to determine whether the skull or facial remains align with the suspect photograph or not. So that is what important. So what are the things which are required for us to do this superimposition? One is the skull and other is the photograph. So we should be having these two as the sources. What we are going to do? The outline of the facial photograph and its positional relationship with the skull and the face bones are going to be matched. So limitation is there for this. A wide possibility of matching with large populations. That means in the case of Ruxton, what happened? The Ruxton was murdered and that lady's housemaid was also murdered. So both skeletal remains were found. So skull is numbered. So skull 1 and skull 2 was there. Initially, the skull 1 was suspected to be of the Ruxton, but it was not matching with Ruxton, but skull 2 was matching with Ruxton, and skull 1 is belonging to the housemaid. So this was a small case study, which indicates that this particular superimposition technique is used only for eliminating. So if you are having many potential evidences and if you are making a match with the suspected evidence and you are creating a circumstantial matching evidence, in that conditions we are going to eliminate any kind of unnecessary evidences. That's it. So by this you can understand the limitations. The skull which we found in a scene, either any skeletal remains, that would be matching with many of the individuals. That is a possibility. We cannot say exactly that this particular skull is belonging to this particular person. So that is not possible. We need other evidences also for that. So, if we want to learn about the superimposition, uh, we have to approach in learning two manners. One is the anatomical relations of the skull with the face. We have to see, that means how the face is related to the skull. Clear? Relation of eye orbit to the eye. So whatever eye is there, how it is related to the orbit circuit. Relation of external nose with nasal aperture. Relation of lips with teeth. Relation of ear with porus acousticus externus. That means the ear bone. And we have to first learn about what is the thickness of facial soft tissue with the bone. So when we are developing the facial reconstruction with the clay or 3D dimensional 3 dimensional development of reconstruction, in that cases also we are going to consider the facial soft tissue, how much thickness would be there, and same thing will be repeated here. As part of anatomical relations of the skull and the facial soft tissues, we can locate all the organs, like we can see the eye or the nose or lips or ear. We can position them onto the skull based on some landmarks. So various landmarks which we can see on the skull and on the face are, first one we can see the vertex at the top of the skull. We can see this. So this is the vertex point, and this is here in the side view, you can see it here. And at the behind of the head we can have one more point, that is opistocranion. This is one point, and this is two points of head. And coming to the forehead, we can see one important point, that is glabella. So this is glabella G, okay, one raised point here. And Nasion point can also be seen. So this is the Nasion point. Here also we can see the Nasion point, the top middle point between the eyes, that is the Nasion point. And coming below like that, you are having one point, that is Ranion point, where the upper edge of the nose bone will be there, that is Ranion point. This is Ranion point. And the lower edge of the nose bone, that is nasal aperture, we can see subnasal layer. So this is subnasal layer, NS. These three parts are of nose. Similarly, here another part of nose can also be seen, that is ala. So ALA, two ala points are there on either sides. So both will be considered to position the thickness of the nose from the frontal view. Okay, so that is 2 points of nose on the frontal side, and these are the 3 points of the nose on the lateral view. Okay, how eyes are positioned? Eyes are positioned based on 2 points. One is the entocanthion. So entocanthion can be seen, and other is the ectocanthion can be seen. Okay, so here this is the entocanthion here, and this is the ectocanthion here. So based on these points, we can position the eyes in the supraorbital margin in the eye socket. So how we can position the cheeks? So this is the cheekbone, right? Zygomatic arch. From the here we are getting a point known as zygonion. That means zygogion. Okay, this point can be located, and we are having points on for the positioning of lips. Okay, chelion can be seen. Chelion, this one is chelion point, where you can position the angle of lips, the edges of lips you can locate by using the chelion point, and middle of the lips you can position it by stomion. So this is one point. Stomion and chelion are points which are used for locating the lips and positioning it according to the teeth which are behind it. That means canines will be there, and these are the points for mouth. And we can position the chin and the jaw based on gonion, pogonion. So pogonion is upper point of the chin. This is the upper point of the chin. Lower point of the chin, gnathion. That means gnanion. Okay, so these particular points can be remembered: gonion, gnanion and pogonion. These 3 points are used to position the chin as well as the jaw edge. Clear? So in this way we have to remember these landmarks which are there on our face, and how we can relate these landmarks to the skull structure. So I hope you have understood the points. So first thing which we have to consider is thickness of facial soft tissue. Methods for thickness estimation. What are the various methods? Puncturing we can see. Okay, so we can see puncturing means it will be seen by putting some kind of needles and how much it should be filled. So this particular technique is applied in reconstruction of face. And radiography can be done, in which we can use X-rays, and ultrasonic probing can be used to see the thickness of the soft tissue. This technique is used, and computerized tomography can also be used, in which we are going to examine the surface of the skull and identify the approximate soft tissue development on that particular surface. So we can refer to the data published by researchers regarding the thickness of soft tissue on the bone. So if you search on Google Scholar regarding the facial thickness, facial soft tissue thickness on the skull or on the facial bone, then at the time you will be getting many journals which are published saying the average thickness of Indians, whether it is Northwest Indians, Northern Indians, Southern Indians, like that. For various types of populations, we have got this research papers. You can refer that and you can develop the thickness of the facial soft tissue. It is different for various populations. So that's why we cannot say one particular population's thickness would be similar with others. So there are so many difference in that. Relation of eye to orbit. So this is the orbit, supraorbital margin we can say it as. Okay, so to this orbit, in this orbit we are going to position our eye. So how exactly it is positioned? So imagine this circle to be the supraorbital margin, and in this we are positioning our eye, and our eye is having 2 points. This one is inner canthus and this one is external canthus. Okay, so this is known as endocanthus and this is known as ectocanthus. Okay, so what is the difference of positioning these two? So this one is having certain height and this one is having certain height. So the relation of eyebrow to supraorbital. So eyebrow, basically before learning about eye we have to see about where is eyebrow located. Eyebrow is to supraorbital margin usually 3 to 5 mm above the supraorbital margin. So if it is the particular orbital margin, so this one is orbital margin, above to this 3 to 5 mm we will be seeing the eyebrows like this. Clear? That is first point. Eye slit position, where it is positioned, ectocanthion and the endocanthion, it is located lower third of the socket. So if this is the socket, it is not positioned in between, it is not positioned in between, it is positioned in lower third part. Clear? So these particular two sides of eye slit are attached by palpebral ligaments. So there are two types of palpebral ligaments. One is medial, which is located here. So here we are having the medial palpebral ligament which is holding the eye, and on other side we are going to have lateral palpebral. So here we are having lateral palpebral ligament. So on either sides we are having this. So this medial endocanthus is located 10 mm below the dichroion. Okay. So 10 mm below. See, here is the dichroion. What is the dichroion? Dichroion is a junction where there is a point of suture from the frontal bone, from the lacrimal bone and the maxillary bone. So lacrimal bone is behind and maxillary bone is coming from below. From above we are having a frontal bone, from below we are having maxillary bone, from inside of the eye we are having the lacrimal bone. So these 3 points are jointing here, that point is known as dichroion. From the dichroion below 10 mm, so from here to here, so this is the endocanthion, right? From here to here 10 mm distance will be there, this is dichroion. Okay, so that is the endocanthion. So later 11 mm below the zygomatico frontal suture, where it is located. So here you are able to see one bone suture, right? So this is called as zygomatico frontal suture. From here 11 mm below you are going to have the ectocanthus. So like that we can position the eye slit to the skull, and this particular zygomatico frontal suture where the particular ectocanthus is located, that particular part will be known as mala tubercle. Okay, so this is how we can relate our eye to the orbitot. These are the important points which I can express. Next one, relation of external nose to nasal aperture. The position of nasion and subnasale. So we have seen the 2 points, right? One is the nasion and other is the subnasale. So these 2 points, external nose matches with nasion and subspinale of the bone, skull. Okay, so nasion is here and the subspinale is also here. this both will correspond to the nose formation. So here we can give the presentation. Okay, so this is the nasion, but that is the external nose, and this is the subnasallae, the external nose. Okay, and this is the nasion common for the bone and as well as the external nose, and subspinale will be inside it. So here it will be there. Clear? Then average difference is 1.4 mm in caucasoid, 1.6 mm in negroid, and in mongoloid this particular positioning is, here we can see Renion. Okay, Renion is a point, landmark, this point. So this point is 1/3 positioned in mongoloid, and this means this is the complete 100%. Okay, so in this 100%, 1/3 position, so this will be shorter in mongoloids, and you will be seeing it little shorter, and it is 1/3 part, and in 1/7 part you will be seeing the subnasallae point. Okay, so that is how the positioning of mongoloid can be understood. So how the external nose can be positioned? According to the race we have to position it. Ala to ala will be having 5 mm lateral margin in caucasoid, and 8 mm negroid margin, and 6.5 mm mongoloid margin. That means the thickness. So the nose, which is this is the natural aperture. Okay, to this natural aperture we are giving a thickness of 5 mm on lateral margin, and we are maintaining it 5 mm, and saying that 5 mm is for caucasoid. Similarly for 8 mm, that means I am increasing the length of this margin, and I am saying it to be belonging for negroid, and 6.5 for mongoloid. So most shortest ala is for caucasoid. So that's what you have to remember while positioning the external nose according to the race. Relation of lips to teeth. So how we can position the lips? So it's also very interesting and simple. At rest, remember the lips or the mouth is at rest without talking or without laughing or any other expression. The central point of the oral slit, that means stomion, which will be positioned in between at stomion, falls 1 to 2 mm higher than the cutting margin of upper incisor. So 1 to 2 mm margin will be there for positioning this particular thing from the central incisor. So from here we have to measure 1 to 2 mm for the upper incisor, and for lower incisor we can extend it whatever it is possible. Lower incisor standard is not given. The oral angle, that means this particular part, the oral angles, two sides are there, which are called as chelions, lies at a junction of canine. So if you put your finger in this corner, for yourself you can touch this. If you put your finger at the corner of your lip, and if you touch the first teeth, whatever it is there, you will sense it to be canine. Okay, canine and first premolar would be there. So that particular point, in this particular point you will be having upper canine and upper premolar. So this particular points can be located by basing on the teeth. And similarly, if you touch the above, you will be getting canine and premolar, right? So below, if you are touching, you will be sensing the first molar of the lower jaw. So difference between the upper and lower height difference is 3 mm. So this is how we can relate the lips position to the teeth, right? So this is how we can draw this structure. That means if we are having the two eye sockets are there, and one nasal aperture is there, and teeth are there. So in this particular way, if you are having, you can position the eyes something like this, nose something like this, and teeth, the canines is there, right? So at the canines you will be putting the chelions, and at stomion you will be positioning the lip central part, and giving the development of vermilion border. So this is the vermilion border, and this is the philtrum, and this is the cupid's bow, that means the depression which can be seen, and the lip bodies can be developed. So this is an imaginary structure which could be given to a particular skull, but this is not complete. Instead of this manual drawing of all these things, we can keep a photograph which will be matching with the bones. And external ear with porous acousticus externus, that is the bone. So this is the arrangement of sideways bones which we can see. Mandible is there. To that mandible, here we can see coronoid process, here we can see the mandibular knots, condylar neck we can see, and temporomandibular ligament we can see at fourth position, and capsule we can see here. And after all this, there will be a depression here which will be called as external acoustic meatus, okay, from which the particular eardrum will be there, that means ear tube will be there passing through that. So the porous acousticus externus is located behind the targus. So if this is the targus, so here you can see this is the targus. So at the targus position, exactly behind that, we are having this particular external acoustic meatus, okay. In an average estimation, the cartilaginous portion of bony portion of ear tube 5 mm above. So how we can design the ear here? So here we are having cartilaginous bone material, that is 5 mm will be there, 2.6 mm behind it will be there, and the lateral 9.6 is observed. So like that we can position the ear. So complete ear would be developed based on this particular things. So after understanding the relationship between the soft tissue and other tissues which are present, skin tissue will be there, soft tissue will be there, muscles will be there, so cartilages will be there. From all these things, we are positioning onto the skull and developing a face. So that is the reconstruction process. Instead of that, if you are keeping a photograph, the same things should be reimagined and we have to position it. So that for that purpose, there were various techniques developed. There are three processes generally applied for superimposition. One can be known as photographic superimposition, which was developed in 1930s, where the photograph is used and the negative copy of the photograph will be placed onto the skull image, and then we will superimpose both of them, and whatever it is matching, we will get the approximate results. And then we can see video superimposition, in which we are going to use the photograph and the skull, and we are going to use a video camera from which we can zoom or we can alter the video which is being recorded, and we can superimpose them. Then we can see computer assisted superimposition technique, which was developed in 1980s. So in which we are going to use the computer for the image photograph and as well as the skull, both of these things. Let's see what are those in. So photographic superimposition, it involves the enlarging of the photograph. So basically it is involving about, if you are getting a photograph, we have to enlarge it, we have to zoom it up to the extent that it will be matching with the live structure of the skull. Sir, skull structure is so much large and photograph is so much small. If we are increasing, if we are enlarging it, and if you are trying to match it with the skull, so there will be some kind of disturbance between the photo and the skull. So there will be something like that. So we have to take the photograph of the skull in the same orientation as like the photograph. So person is in a photograph, he is posing in this particular direction, so he is looking in this direction. So the skull should also be positioned in that direction, and you have to take the photograph of that skull into the same scale. So if you are maintaining 1 inch as the scale, and in the photograph also you should be maintaining 1 inch as the scale to the size of unknown skull, and then position the skull in same orientation as like the photograph. So enlargement of a facial photograph is one point. Only to certain extent we can enlarge it. We cannot enlarge it into a very larger size. We have to enlarge the facial photograph in such extent that it will be able to match with the skull. So we can do approximate matching of all the landmarks which are present on the face. So we have learnt various landmarks, right? So for ear, for eye, we can see the landmark here, ecto and ento canthus we can see, and external meatus we can see, and the nascian we can see, subnassia we can see, and stomion we can see, and based on all this vertex and the cranion points, all these points we can consider and we can position the photo on this. So this particular thing which we are seeing is called as craniophore, which is used to orient the skull into various directions and match with the facial photographs. So if the facial photograph is looking into the sideways and we want the skull to be also in the same direction, then this particular stand will be there which will be used, and which on which we can position the skull into various directions. The thing which is important to be here, that means the scale of what you are photographing to the skull should match with the scale of the photograph which we are having. So photograph size is something this much, here the skull photograph also should be this much, and the face orientation whatever it is there, both should be in same, then only you can superimpose and you will be getting the approximate results, a good results you will be getting. So we cannot change the thing which we can see in the photo editing is we cannot change the width or length of the skull or the photograph. We should not change that. It should be naturally in that particular only, and only we can zoom equally in all the directions but not in single direction. So zooming should be done in all directions but not into a single direction. If you are doing the zooming of image in only one direction like this, if you are zooming, it is going to become wider but not normal. Okay, we need a normal zoom. That's the point to be noted for photographic superimposition. Then video superimposition can also be seen, in which it involves two video streaming cameras, so running cameras, so live it is going on, and three monitor screens, on one which we are having the skull and other we are having the photograph, and on the middle one we are having the superimposition. Clear? So three monitors will be there and a video mixer unit will be there. That means the video which is taken by camera 1 will be mixed by video which is recorded by the camera 2. Okay. So this both will be mixed and it will be visible on the monitor which is in between, that will be called as the third monitor. The video captured from the camera can be adjusted by zooming. One thing we can do, we can zoom up to certain extent. So the zooming whatever it is used, we are going to use optical lens. So only optical lens are used, in which we are going to have the lens, and using those lens we are going to magnify it. So that's possible only with the camera lens. So pixelating zooming is not suggested, and for that we don't use it. And one more thing which we can do is the skull. Previously you have seen the craniophore, right? The skull is positioned on that and we can say change its orientation. So similarly we can see a motor which is there, which will be under this craniophore, and it can change the orientation using a joystick. So for motor movement, we will put a motor in which it will be useful for us to move the skull from one direction to the other direction. So and the orientation also. And the superimposition is done by the mixer unit and reproduced on the third screen. So this is how this particular thing will be visible. This is the screen. So I said you three screens would be there. We can divide the screens here itself. And then this is the skull where it is been located. So there are very good light sources inside this particular chamber. If you turn on all the lights, the skull will be highly illuminated and you will be getting high clarity image on the screen. Then these are the control panels in which you will be having the joysticks, and you can position, you can change the orientation of the skull into various directions according to the photograph. So these are other controls which are there to change the positioning of the photograph as well. So we can change the photograph, we can make it near to the camera, away from the camera, camera controls, all these things will be there here. So this is a computerized superimposition system given by Fusinon. Computer assisted superimposition can also be seen as a technique. There are usually two categories in this. First method is dealing with digitalizing the skull and the photograph. Nothing but you are taking a scanned photograph of the skull and the facial image, superimposing those two morphologically through the image processing. Okay, I will show the images related to that, so that you will be matching the skull and the photograph, both transparent manner you can see, putting it side by side you can see, and half the image of face and half the image of skull, both you can keep and you can match. So those are the possibilities using the first method. And second method is a little complicated and most advanced technique. I am not going into more details. It is going to involve polynomial functions. That means the values which are there in this polynomial functions will be non-negative integers and the positive integers. That means you are going to have the graphical representation only onto the positive side. That means if the graph is there x and y, this particular values will be mentioned here, and our readings which are there for skull and the head, facial head, both should be giving the same kind of peaks. At that time you can say the similarity between this particular values are same. And Fourier harmonic analysis can also be done, in which we are going to get the frequency against the time. So this two frequency against the time should be equally matching for both the skull and this particular face images. So if we are getting such kind of values, similar values, then you can say both are fitting to each other between the skull and photograph. This fitting of a skull and photograph, by default we will be giving the thickness of the soft tissue. So thickness of a soft tissue will be already considered. After that only we will be getting this polynomial functions or the harmonic analysis. So principle is matching between mathematical coordinate values of skull and photograph. That's made very simple. Let's see the images. So this is the first method which we have seen. So positioning the skull onto the face and seeing all the points are matching or not. So until we match these points, we will be searching for this particular match. Clear? So putting it side by side, skull half side and the face half side. So up and down half sides we can position. So when it is exactly matching, then we can finalize that this would be the match, but not exactly. We don't say the match is exact. This would be the match for this particular face. That's what we can say. And the second method, we can see the graphic representation here. The skull, the surface of the skull which is given here, and the surface of the face which is given here, both should match. So representing the match, we will be getting a graph in that. So for which we are going to have the integers. In this both will be matching. So the lines difference which is there, it is very minute, and it is giving the almost similarity between the skull and the face. So this is how we can understand the superimposition technique. We have seen photographic superimposition, video superimposition, and computer assisted superimposition. And before that, we have understood the basic principle of superimpositioning, that is the relationship between the facial organs and the facial parts with the skull, how they are related and how we can match their relation. So I hope you have understood the topic well, and thank you for watching this video.